If you've watched the news or read the newspaper lately, you've seen some of what's been happening in Syria. We're going to talk about that this morning because you can't just ignore it. We're going to see an image that's not easy to see, that's painful, and that's difficult. It makes us uneasy, but we owe it to those children to look, to see, because we've turned a blind eye for too long. His name was Alan, and he was 3 years old. The only life he ever knew was one of fear and fleeing because he was born in the midst of a terrible civil war which caused he and his family, like millions of others like him, to be refugees wandering without a home. Wearing a bright red t-shirt and shorts, Alan took to the sea with his family. At least 20 left the beach on Wednesday in a boat on the Bordeaux Peninsula in Turkey in a desperate attempt to make it to the Greek island of Kos. Over 300 others like him have crossed the sea this year to get to the other side, to get to Europe, to get to freedom, to get to a life without fear. But the sea became rough, and the wind and waves picked up, and the small overloaded boat capsized. And Alan and his 5-year-old brother Galip slipped beneath the waves and drowned along with their mother. His body was found like this, washed upon the Turkish shore. He never made it to the other side. Verity sleeps like that every single night, arms at her side, face down on her little knees. My daughter sleeps like that every single night, and it's cute and it's adorable because I know she will wake up again. Alan never will. This picture and dozens like it of humanity washed ashore makes my stomach twist and sicken with a mixture of nausea, despair, disbelief, and anger. Anger at a world with people who would cause this to happen. Anger at a world where people would allow this to happen. Anger at myself for turning away and not looking at the faces of the over 250,000 people who have already died because of this crisis until now. The wind and the waves took Alan and his family, but I can't help but wonder, could we have calmed their storm? In Mark chapter 4, verses 35 to 41, Jesus tells his disciples to cross to the other side of the sea, to cross a boundary that separated two kinds of people who were told they were fundamentally different. It meant crossing into unknown territory, embracing the other. But the crossing of that political and cultural boundary wasn't easy. The crossing never is. Mark 4, 35 to 41. On that day when evening had come, he said to them, "Let us go across to the other side." And leaving the crowd behind, they took him with them in the boat, just as he was. Other boats were with him. A great windstorm arose, and the waves beat into the boat, so that the boat was already being swamped. But he was in the stern, asleep on the cushion, and they woke him and said, "Teacher, do you not care that we are perishing?" He woke up and rebuked the wind and said to the sea, "Peace, be still." Then the wind ceased, and there was a dead calm. He said to them, "Why are you afraid? Have you still no faith?" And they were filled with great awe and said to one another, "Who then is this that even the wind and the sea obey him?" Jesus calms the storm. With a simple phrase, "Peace, be still," Jesus puts whatever is raging around us to rest. When oceans rise and thunders roar, we can trust that the captain of the boat to not only see us through the squall, but also to ensure smooth sailing. I mean, that's the point of the story, right? That's why there are songs and paintings and sermons around 3 simple words. Peace. Be still. So I guess this can be a pretty short sermon because all we have to do is remember that even in these horrible storms, we don't need to fear because Jesus is in the boat with us, ready to quiet the wind and the waves. Except the waves swallowed that 3-year-old boy. Except the captain, Jesus, is at the back of the boat asleep while the disciples fear for their lives. Except Jesus accuses the disciples of having little faith after they wake him. They obviously trust his power enough to go to him when the sea is too much. When the storms of life are raging, we stand by Jesus, right? Isn't that faith? So why does Jesus ask, have you still no faith, when they turn to him? Maybe we're missing the point of the story. In Mark, the sea is a metaphor for the demonic and chaotic forces that stand against the kingdom of God. And it's a boundary, literal and metaphorical, between Jew and Gentile. In their attempt to cross to the other side and to bring hope and healing and good news, the demonic forces within the sea, lying in wait like a troll under a bridge, stir the waters into a horrible whirlwind of a storm. It's enough to terrify even the most veteran sailors. It's never easy to bring the good news of the kingdom to the other side. It's easy to yell at the other side, to blame the other side, but it's not easy to go to the other side. It's why we rarely do. We stay within our own groups, our own ideologies, our own politics, our own faith, our own communities. But God in Christ is a God on the move, a God on a mission, and he crosses the ontological divide between that which is creator and that which is creation to be with us. God is a God on the move towards us, always towards us. Even if we're on the other side of a chasm, the other side of death, the other side of a demonic and chaotic sea, God moves towards us. But demons stir when God is on the move. Jesus knows this, but he chooses to sleep in the boat rather than keep watch with the disciples. That might seem a bit odd, but right before he and the disciples set off, he teaches them with the parable that God's power is at work even while we sleep. You see, Jesus trusts the disciples to lead him to the other side, through the sea, through the forces of evil, through the storms that assail us. A chapter earlier, when Jesus first commissions and calls the disciples, he gives them the power to cast out demons. They have the power to rebuke the demons that stir up the wind and the waves. They have everything they need for the facing of this hour, except for the faith. My mother taught me how to do laundry. I was with her when she did mine, and she showed me how to sort my clothes and how to use the machine. I'd seen it done several times, and she even walked me through the steps so I could do it myself. One day my laundry was piling up. "Mom, I need my clothes washed." "Okay, go wash them." I did the smell test on a few shirts. You know what I'm talking about. I thought I could last a bit longer, at least until Saturday when Mom would be home all day and she could do my laundry. "Mom, I have no clean clothes for church tomorrow." See, that'll get her to do my laundry. Use the whole can't go to church without church clothes things. "Okay, well, the laundry machine is free." I don't think she understood my point. I didn't want to do my laundry. I wanted my mom to do my laundry. Maybe I was scared I'd ruin my clothes. Maybe I didn't trust I really knew what I was doing and would ruin the washing machine. Maybe I just didn't want to have to do it myself when there was someone else perfectly capable of doing a good job of it. "But you're my mother. You're supposed to do my laundry. It's written in your contract, Mother." "No. I'm your mother. I'm supposed to teach you how to do your laundry because I won't always be here to do it for you." The disciples, commissioned by the Son of God to cast out demons, cannot or will not rebuke the wind and the waves of the demonic sea. Did you notice they don't even try? They're too busy calming themselves to calm the storm. They're too busy casting out water from their own boat to cast out the demons around it. They were given the power for the facing of this very hour, but they failed to act. You see, the disciples know Jesus can cast out demons. They have faith in him. They've seen it time and time again. They just don't know they can, or they aren't willing to. But that's why Jesus called them to follow for the facing of this hour. for the facing down of boundaries, for the facing down of evil, for the facing down of that which separates and says, these are more important than those. Jesus calls them to follow because he knows they can bring peace to a stormy sea and a shaken soul. Jesus calls the disciples to follow him, which means he believes they have what it takes to be like him, to continue his mission, to be God on the move in the world, to be Christ's hands and feet. The Gospels tell us that Jesus gives his followers the power to proclaim the good news, to cast out demons, to heal every kind of disease and sickness. He even tells them that the gates of hell themselves cannot overcome them, but they're still afraid. And fear often either leads to inaction or selfish action. And the disciples see Jesus in the back of the boat having a snooze, and their fear compounds. Do you not care that we are perishing? They look to the one person in the boat that they think can save them, and he is asleep. Do you not care that we're perishing? God calls us into the boat to cross to the other side, where 3-year-old boys like Alan need us, and we failed him. But there are millions more like him right now who are being tossed by the storms of ISIS and a Syrian civil war, who have been displaced and who are homeless, who are on the run, who are strangers in a strange land, and they cry out, does no one care that we are perishing? And they are perishing. People are perishing all around us. The waves are stealing more and more lives. Humanity is washing ashore in our towns and in our streets. Over 250,000 lives have been lost in this conflict. Almost 3,000 lives have been lost trying to cross the sea to get to freedom. The wind and the waves grow fierce, and there's no one to rebuke them. We often shake our heads and wonder if God is asleep. Maybe we wonder if God has even stopped caring about us. God, why aren't you doing anything about this? I brought you with me in the boat, didn't I? You're out on the sea, aren't you? You have the power to do something. I called you for a time such as this, for the facing of this hour. You are what I am doing. So what are we doing? We are the church. We are made for this, for the facing of this hour. Jesus calls us for this, to be Christ's hands and feet in the world, to be his voice that can say to a war-torn world and violent sea, peace, be still. But we've been all too silent. Those in the boats tossed by wind and waves like little Alan can't help but look at us, those in the boat with them who might have the power to do something. They ask us, who God has put in the boat of this world with them, do you not care that we are perishing? Do we? Do we care? Have we been sleeping? The conflict has been going on for 5 years now. Lives have been lost, families have been displaced, 4 million refugees, half of whom are under 18. Have we been asleep all this time? I have, I confess. I've been asleep in the comfortable and safe back of the boat here in the USA, enjoying my white, straight, male, middle-class American Christian privilege, able to sleep on a smooth sea while others are perishing in it all around me. I confess I haven't noticed the storm, I haven't heard the cries, I haven't seen the waves swallowing children, and yet I was called by God to keep watch. I was called by God to cross the sea to these people. I was called by God to rebuke these storms and not sleep through them. But we do sleep through them. Maybe we sleep through these storms so we can be wide awake, so we can shout at each other about Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump and Kim Davis. We're more than ready and willing to rebuke each other's politics about marriage and health care and social services and religious freedom, yet we remain silent while waves wash bodies of children on the shore. Is there something wrong with that? We're too busy worrying about whether Christianity is under attack in America. Let me clear it up for you right now. It's not. But we're too busy thinking it is to think about real persecution in this world. There's a difference between privilege and persecution. Having the Ten Commandments not allowed in a courthouse anymore is not persecution. It's a loss of privilege because no other religious laws are in there. Not being able to sing a religious song at a school was not persecution. It's a loss of privilege because I guarantee you they're not singing Hindu or Islamic songs in those schools. It's a loss of privilege. And we don't like it. And we focus so much at that, we see our Christian privilege waning and mistake it for persecution. And then we have the gall to question God about whether God even cares that the church's position of pious privilege and power is perishing, while God's children are suffering and dying all around us. And we're worried about, can we sing this song at the school football game? And that boy's on a beach. Glennon Doyle Melton writes a Christian blog for mothers called Momastery. She was recently asked why she hasn't weighed in on Donald Trump and Kim Davis and all this yet. She posted this yesterday. It's a little harsh, but it needs to be heard. She said, if you are a person spending any minutes discussing your faith-based anti-gay marriage stance while terrified babies are slipping out of their desperate parents' arms into a churning, deep, dark waters never to be seen again, where you're looking at the reason the world has become less and less interested in your faith-based anything. It's true. That's the biggest problem with the church today, with Christians. We're too busy trying to calm ourselves about our faith-based privilege and power to calm the wind and waves that batter people's lives. And we wonder why young people are disillusioned with the concept of church. It's because all too often, in the facing of these hours, these times when the church needs to really do something, we sit on our hands rather than being Christ's hands. We argue over petty things that we think we can handle because they're easy. Dealing with the refugee crisis is hard. Complaining about politics is easy. We choose the easy. And we wonder why people aren't coming to church as much anymore. Is it that we don't believe we have the power to do anything? Or do we choose not to use the power given to us to stand against the forces of prejudice and hatred, bigotry, violence, abuse, and terror, and stand with victims and refugees and marginalized? Which is it? Do we not believe we can do anything, or do we just not want to? I think we're afraid. We're afraid. Too afraid to cross the sea, too afraid to rebuke the storms, too afraid to lose what we have, so we do not rebuke, we do not calm, we do not offer peace. Instead, we huddle down in the bottom of our boats and watch the squall through stained glass, assuming someone else, God, will do something, because after all, what else can we really do? We like to abdicate responsibility, like Pilate washing his hands of Jesus. We try to wash our hands of the pain of this world and lay it all on God. You calm the storm, Jesus. You feed the hungry. You bind up the brokenhearted. You release the captives. And we'll watch and we'll pray and we'll trust that you can get the job done. Is that faith? Is that right there faith? If it is, then it's no wonder the church is in every denomination and flavor is shrinking. That certainly isn't the faith we heard James talk about all summer long. Faith is work and faith is hard, but it's why the church exists. For faith that casts out discrimination. For faith that heals division. For faith that rebukes painful words. For faith that binds up broken hearts. For faith that silences storms that would keep us from proclaiming that nothing can separate any of us from the love of God. For faith that rescues God's children from being swallowed by the waves of a chaotic sea. God calls us for the facing of this hour. Christ asks us to be his hands and feet and be on the move toward those in need. He asks us to lead and love and save and sacrifice. But isn't that Jesus' job? I mean, what's he doing while all of these atrocities are happening? Is he asleep at the right hand of the Father? I mean, Jesus should rebuke the demons. He should calm things down. Why is Jesus silent in the midst of this storm? Why won't he do anything? There's a comic strip called BC that chronicles the humorous everyday lives of cavemen, because what else would cavemen's lives be if not humorous? A few years ago, there was a strip in which the two cavemen were sitting together under the night sky when one says, "Sometimes I want to ask God why God let so many bad things happen in the world." The other asks, well, why don't you? Because I'm afraid he would ask me the same question. When the disciples told Jesus the crowd who had been following him was hungry and had nothing to eat, Jesus said, "Feed them." So they took what little was there, 5 loaves and 2 fish, and they began to pass baskets around to the crowd until everyone had their fill. And even after that, there was enough for 40 baskets of leftovers. Did the disciples feed that crowd, or did Jesus? The answer, of course, is yes. So who will welcome these refugees? Who will feed them? Who will clothe them? Who will help them to safety through the waters? Who will love them? Who will give them peace? Who will bring them hope? Who has the grace and the wisdom and the courage and the power and the will and the love for the facing of this hour, the greatest humanitarian crisis of our time? 11 million people displaced. Who? Who is it? If you think you are called for the facing of this hour, if you believe God calls the church to act and to move in this world and to rebuke and silence the demons and bring peace, then I invite you to come to our mission committee Tuesday at 7:15 p.m. in the church library. There are no easy answers or solutions, but that doesn't mean we give up. Doesn't mean we abdicate responsibility. We'll talk about what we should do, what we can do, what we must do as Christ's church for those penniless refugees fleeing a dangerous homeland, trying to find safety and welcome on a foreign soil. Which refugees are those, you ask? The Syrian refugees or the Holy Family? Jesus, Mary, and Joseph? The answer, of course, is yes. Let us pray together. Almighty God, we confess. We confess we haven't followed you as we should. We haven't used the power you've given us. We haven't used the means you've given us. We've been distracted by our own privilege, by our own petty arguments, to see the full toll of pain in this world that you call us to do something about. Forgive us, Lord, and grant us the wisdom and the courage for the facing of this hour, that we can be a church who acts as your hands and feet, who brings you to other people, who brings peace to the storms. We pray this in your Son's name. Amen. This table is a gift. It's a gift to us who don't deserve it, but it's given to us anyway. It's a table that reconciles. It's a table that heals. It's a table that brings peace. Through broken bread and broken body, it brings healing and calls us to break down the walls that separate us, to break down the layers of our own privilege so others have basic rights. One of the basic truths of the world is no one gains a basic right without someone else losing a privilege. Karen talked to the children about basic rights. What privileges are we willing to give up for those children to have basic rights? Jesus came here and gave up his life, so we have the right to life, the right to be in the family of God, the right to be called sons and daughters of God on high. And he came and gave that to us. And he gives it to us in this table and says, you are welcome, whoever you are welcome to this table and this meal. And so we remember on the same night Christ was betrayed, he took bread. And after he blessed it, he broke it. And he gave it to his disciples, saying, take and eat. This is my body broken for you. Do this in remembrance of me. And in the same manner, after eating, he took the cup. And he said, this is the cup of the new covenant, sealed in my blood. Do this as often as you drink it in remembrance of me. For as often as you eat this bread and you drink the cup, you proclaim the Lord's death until he comes again. So let us now draw near to God and bless this meal that we are about to share.